Hey everybody, this is your boy John, and today's episode is going to be an Evolve episode. So again, it's going to be more of a kind of like what we've called it before, a really serious episode. But stay tuned to find out because I'm going to tell you it's really good information today. Hey everybody, this is your boy John again, and on today's episode of Geeks from the Multiverse podcast, I have with me as always is Matt.
What's up, everybody?
And I have a special guest today. It is my dad, Brian Lally.
Woohoo!
How's everybody doing?
Wow, that was a really generic kind of a...
Hey, I'm
What it
sorry. I'm just.
This is your... Come on, this is like an exciting moment, right? Come on.
Hey, everybody, how you doing?
Listen, that's better. That's better. I like it. I like the energy. I mean, unfortunately, we're going to be talking a little bit serious today, guys. But so just kind of a disclaimer, we're going to be talking about, men's loneliness and just kind of unfortunately, the side effects of society, regarding this issue, this stigma. And, part of it, too, is, be fair warned now that there might be some triggering information or facts or things like that, just, to be aware. So if you are listening, again, with children or anything like that, just be fair warned now. Okay. So just, if you need to stop it, then stop it right now. But anyways, Matt, let's do this, man. I mean, I know it's a serious topic. I know it's, something that unfortunately for guys in America, it's really around the world, it's a serious issue that we don't like to talk about in society.
It's funny, but it's not funny because it's a topic that as men we don't talk about, but yet we're three guys talking about it.
It's true. That's it's very true.
It's male loneliness is not, you think, well, I'm married, I have friends, I'm not lonely, but it goes deeper than just, loneliness, like how you think of loneliness. And a lot of women don't experience the same level of loneliness because they will actually tell people through their friends or family or whoever, that they get close to that they are lonely.
Well, again, they're better showing it emotions. That's the biggest thing is men, we don't do that. I mean, unfortunately, as a society, and really we'll talk about generational effects, right? So depending on when you grew up, your family could have been, hey, embrace the suck it up, buttercup, forget about all this other crap. And unfortunately, I'm looking at my dad at this, but he understands, and I know I understand this too, but we understand the generational effect of how it can create causes down the road. But go ahead, Dad. I know you got something to say.
Well, yes. When I grew up, that was one of the things that was kind of instilled in us is you hold your feelings back. You don't cry. As a man, you don't cry, especially with your grandfather, my father, and your great-grandfather. They were very strict. They were very, I don't know how to put this, by the book.
Yeah, like the old school way of thinking.
Well, very old school.
Right. But we're talking about dinosaur ages. I got you. That's fine.
Yeah, my dad got his butt whooped because he cried.
Right.
So, and then I was thrown into that mix because it was a vicious cycle. But I tried to keep you and your brother from that. And I think I did a good job.
No, you did. I mean, like I said, as we get older as males, right, we have this instilled factor. It's kind of more of it feels like more of an instinct, right? Because when we feel, people that pass on or, traumatic events or things like that, we're told that we need to be strong through these events, but at the end of the day, it's like, when you see even our wives, right? If something were to happen in the moment, they're going to do it in the moment. We're going to take that time to wait, and then we'll probably process it. And it's going to take a long time to do that because it's not just like an instantaneous thing. It's a progressing thing that just happens over time. And then one day it just happens and you just literally bawl and you don't know what you're doing because you haven't really thought about it in that moment, but you've let it go on for so long. That's the problem where I feel like, with the loneliness piece, it's like, we as men, we, like you said, we have family, we have friends, we have all this, but it's realizing that, just like women, right? They have a social group, they have these core people, but we need to rely on each other to be like, hey, listen, like this is what's going on, and like, how do I get through this, man? And how can I work on, getting through whatever I'm working, on? Like, for example, I'll say it, like, recently, and I know I'm going to make fun of this guy for a second, but I became Mr. Mom. Okay, like I know he's laughing. You can laugh all you want.
Hulk Hogan.
Listen, my point is that I understand as a man that I know society views it as a non-acceptable way of looking at it. Unfortunately, it's true because you are the provider. You are the sole person to be able to, provide for families. Right. So I did it, and for so long, and I said, Allie, you do you, and here I am now taking care of my son during the day and trying to do all that. I understand a lot more of what she did, and I feel that perspective. I understand what goes on, and it's tough, but at the end of the day, I'm like, I still feel alone in a sense because now I'm dealing with, him crying, my son, all day long, and then, my wife's trying to sleep at night and do whatever, or really during the day, and then I'm feeling alone. Where I know where she felt, before, where she was feeling alone in that moment. So it's like kind of that, adverse effect. And now I'm like, now how do I get through this? Now, how can I, de-stress? How can I like take a minute to like process the whole situation?
Right.
And that's what I'm saying, and I understand that's different between the both of you, but that's a common, and unfortunately I would say nowadays that can be more common.
It's very common. And I think, you look at geek culture as a whole, which, we're a podcast for geek culture. So
yes, of course.
You look at geek culture as a whole, and loneliness is definitely an important issue, just due to the amount of isolation, the bullying, the fear of being vulnerable. It's a huge issue, and it forces people to want to be alone, not to want to open up. Women, yes, they are more emotional creatures than men are. It's not a huge secret, I think, at this point.
No, yeah. I mean, and that's just our instincts. That's just literally nature. That's just how we're designed. I mean, they're more nurturing than we are, and we're more like, again, unfortunately, we kind of feel all right, come on, you don't need to cry. Come on, let's go. It's okay. Things are okay. We're thinking more realistically in that moment. They're like, okay, it's okay, honey. It's all right. Like it's fine. But at the end of the day, if like, let's say you were a single dad, now you're playing both parts, and that's a lot harder to, manage the both and try to figure that out. That I know, again, this is more of a geek kind of topic we're trying to be, more towards, but I'm just saying it as a general whole right now. You know what I mean?
I mean, there's a whole subculture, if you want to call it a subculture. The military.
Oh yeah.
In the military, suck it up, buttercup. It's time to go do the mission. You got to do the mission.
Yep.
Guess what? Doesn't matter how you feel right now. It's you got to go do what you got to do. Then think about it later.
Yep.
So, I mean, that it's getting better now, but it's
and on some levels you need that in the moment. You know what I mean? Like you need that mentality on the battlefield, like in that moment.
You're right.
But when those, soldiers and those military, troops come home, you also need the other side, which there hasn't been.
Now what?
Right. Now what?
You have too much time to think. You have too much time to de-stress. And when you start de-stressing and you start thinking about everything you've gone through, and there's no one there that understands it, you're alone. And you feel alone.
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of guys don't understand that there are everyone else that's feeling the exact same way. They've got to come together.
Right. It's about saying, hey, man, or hey, bro, like, let's talk about this for a second. And just admitting the fact, it's like, it's just like, and I'm going to say it like addiction, right? Admitting you have a problem, or admitting that you're like, hey, I'm alone right now. I need to talk to somebody, and I need you to listen to me for a minute. And then I'll do the same thing for you. Because then that's where you get that bro, I'd say a broship, right? You get that partnership of like, all right, cool. Now I have somebody I can rely on. Now I can talk to somebody and I don't have to feel, alone or really segregated from everybody else.
Which goes into what you and I are near and dear,
Right.
the 22 a day.
Correct. Now I know
that falls suit with that. That's like the aftermath of what we're talking about.
No, of course. If you guys don't know, hopefully you would, but 22 a day. So unfortunately, the statistics is, most, veterans as a whole will commit suicide. There's 22 usually a day that have it, every single day. And so with that being said, if it sucks because like either way, you're like the number should be zero. There shouldn't be anybody even committing this, and it doesn't even matter if you're a veteran or not.
Yeah,
like
one's too many.
One's too many. Like and that's where as men, whether you're a veteran, whether you're a geek, whether you're whatever you are, right? At the end,
most vets are geeks.
I know that, but I'm just saying, like as a whole, it shouldn't matter because I can guarantee you, as a man, you're going to find something that you're going to probably relate to them in some level. It may not be on everything, but you'll find something that you can at least relate to and maybe talk about certain things.
Mm-hmm.
That's the piece.
So let's jump into some stats, and I'm going to segue into this one, and it's kind of right in the middle, but it relates to what you guys were just saying.
I didn't mean to jump ahead.
No, we're good. It's all good.
No, it's good because it actually relates to this particular stat because in the U.S. in 2017, the suicide rate was 3 times that of the female rate. And then in 2018, there was a slight drop, but it increased in 2020. And it's now roughly about 4 to 4.5 times higher. So it's roughly 22 people per 100,000.
To me, I'll say it. Granted, I was overseas at the time when COVID happened, but, I can only imagine, if you're literally at home and you don't have anything better to do, or if you're with your significant other, your family, whatever, right? And you get those tensions, you get those feelings and everything else, but like then you're like, how am I feeling? Like if I'm supposed to be the provider, and let's say you lost your job or something like that, how are you feeling in that moment? Like you're feeling like, okay, well, I can't do anything. Granted, everyone, there's a lot of people that lost their jobs, but how is that even going to continue forward? Like now, thank God that they have. The jobs are coming back and, people are trying to work and do all this and there's remote jobs. And if, people want to do that, great. But at that time, we didn't know exactly how long this is going to happen. And, how long, it's now, if we're looking at it, it happened really 22 was kind of the ending portion roughly. So we're talking like almost a 2-year span of like how our country or really the world just, changed over this one single event. And we're still having some side effects from it. You know what I'm saying? Like it's crazy to me that, when you look at that stat, of course, yeah, I'm going to say it, males are more susceptible for that. Females are if they're going to talk about it, they're just, and I hate saying it like this, but it's more of an attention. It's like, and it can be both male and female, but it would say it's more attention seeking, and it's not really right or wrong in what I'm trying to say here, but it's hard to, see how, females would probably, let's say, be higher in this case. Cause I'd be like, no, I would say men's are going to probably be a lot higher in a lot of different categories, probably, looking at these stats.
Excuse me. Nowadays, this has become more prevalent. So a lot more people are speaking out about it.
Right.
About men loneliness. Back after World War II, all the way up till almost present. I wouldn't say right now, but because it's becoming more prevalent, it's becoming more of an issue that people are talking about, that men actually do have feelings.
I would probably say it was like World War II up until like maybe early 2000s.
Correct.
And then that's really when we were like, hey, listen, like there's seriously an issue going on, of what's going on at the time. And now granted, I understand a big population really was the veteran community or really military individuals, really the military community as a whole, but like, it can be in other industries. It can be in a whole slew of different things as well.
That may have been a big portion, but like you said, it's everywhere.
Right. Right. It can be in EMS. It can be in law enforcement. It can be in
especially first responders.
Exactly. So there's all kinds of different things that those high level stress jobs. That's where a lot of these come into play.
Yeah, it's just a staggering. You think of out of 100,000 people, 22 of them are going to commit suicide. That's a staggering.
Which follows suit with the veteran 22 a day. That's
right.
Saying it's it's disgusting to me, actually.
It's also
gross.
ridiculous. I mean, and the problem also with that too is that, I mean, and I know we're just not trying to go on a huge rant, but it also kind of deals with if we're talking about the military community, but more the homeless population.
Yes.
A lot of of course, vets are homeless. And so that also kind of ties into, this whole portion of the loneliness piece, right? Because now you're coming back home from a war. How are you trying to transition into, let's say, a job or do other things like that? And now your own, government or your own really community is not helping with that transition and helping you get into where you need. And now you're feeling even more alone. And now you're on the streets. And then what else is there? You have no life. You have no purpose. There is nothing that you can look forward to, right? And that's where, as a whole, right? That's where I would hope that, not even just the homeless population in that sense, but as men, I'm saying this as men, to come together. Like instead of bullshitting each other and being like, oh no, I'm good, man. Nah, bro, I know you're not fucking good. Talk about it. Shut the fuck up, and I need you to listen to me, and I need you to hear me.
I mean, instead of that message like that, we've heard growing up, and we've all heard it as guys. We've all heard it.
Yeah.
Throw some dirt on it, get back up, and get back out there. Like we've all heard the message, and it's not as easy as that anymore. Like it's not just as easy as throw some dirt on it, get back out there.
Mm-hmm.
Like
it's saying, hey, what's going on, man? Have that conversation. Like if you're true bros, if you're true individuals with each other, have that conversation. If you're a man, have a conversation, because that's what's being a man is about, right? Because then you'll have that intimate, well, it's not an intimate relationship, but that intimate moment with each other saying, hey, you hear me, I hear you. Now you're on a stronger level as now you can rely on that guy, no matter which way it turns, right? And then that's where you should be at.
Yeah.
I'm not going to go very personal, but my son knows. And I know I was in combat and I came back with post-traumatic stress disorder. Post-traumatic stress disorder, one of the biggest things for someone that actually has it is the isolation. It's the fear that no one knows what you're going through. It's the loneliness of that fear. That's one of the biggest things that turns a vet into homeless, suicide,
addict.
An addict, all kinds of things.
It's one of the major factors, major contributors to what vets and everyone else. And I'm not even just talking. PTSD is not just a vet alone thing. It is everyone that goes through a traumatic experience that it resonates in their head.
Right. And it doesn't actually need to be, let's say, again, combat related. It doesn't have to be law enforcement related. It doesn't have to be anything.
I mean, we've seen it working with, in rehab when we were working together. We've seen it a lot there.
I mean, there's a lot of, it's just, and the thing is, too, is that what we think is traumatic is also a lot different for somebody else.
Right.
And that's the biggest thing. So that's where I need, a lot of these men, hopefully, that are listening, and maybe women, too, who maybe need to listen as well. It doesn't matter what it exactly is. If that's actually affecting that individual, or really, let's say this man, since we're talking about men, hear them out. Don't just negate whatever they're talking about, because at the end of the day, whatever it really is, I mean, if it's really affecting them that much, then listen to what they have to say.
I would say that this is just as important to women to listen to.
Correct.
Let's get to some other stats, because like the suicide one is staggering, but if there are women listening, like some of these other stats, like you need to understand, like these stats like are not great when it comes to us men. And it's really, all of them are really kind of disgusting when you're looking at them. And if you're not having a discussion and you're with, a man, and you're not having a discussion with him about how he feels, you're probably failing him.
And you're also,
and I'm not trying to like blame you for anything, but if you're not having an actual 100% real conversation with him about how he feels because he's good, he's probably not.
And not only that, I mean, just to even, talk about more on that is, as a woman, right? If you're worried about your man, you want them to open up in a sense.
Yeah.
Like Matt was literally just saying, if you want them to open up in that sense, have that conversation. Don't just assume that they're fine and everything's great and hunky dory, whatever. At the end of the day, you guys have feelings. Guess what? We have feelings too. And it bottles up. That's the problem. We bottle that shit up and we don't let it out.
So let's get through some of these, like the first couple of these, because the very first one, it boggles my mind. 48% of men report feeling satisfied with their friendships. That means 51%, which is the majority, are not satisfied with their friendships.
Does it go into what they consider friendship? I mean, I'm curious.
Assuming it's just overall friendships.
Okay.
Well, I mean,
it doesn't say like relationship.
Yeah.
Like it just said, the statistic was just friendships.
Well, okay, here's another piece to this too. I'm going to read this next part. 1 in 5 men said they have gotten emotional support from a friend in the past week compared to 4 in 10 women. So they're saying, of course, one guy out of 5 is actually getting the right support that they need from their friends versus, let's say, 4 out of the 10.
Yeah.
So that means, well, clearly men as a whole, we need to start looking at our friendships and we need to say, hey, what are you giving me as a whole? And how am I going to do the same thing? Because it's not just a one-way thing. It is a two-way thing, just like your relationships, right? Because if you're not putting in effort, then you should be doing the same thing.
But I'm going to go a little deeper on that one statistic. Friendship with men and friendship with women are two two separate things.
Yes,
and the reason I say this is because I would rather have 5 badass men
Correct.
than 100 acquaintances.
No, I full-heartedly agree with that statement.
You see what I'm saying?
I would rather have a core group.
Mm-hmm.
And I actually, I'm pretty sure I know exactly what you're talking about. It was some old Italian dude who, I'm pretty sure that said that, but I can't remember his name, but I do know what you're talking about. And it's true though. I would rather.
Excuse my French, but I'd rather have 2 motherfuckers. We could take over the world.
Yeah. That, have like 100 acquaintances. But no, it's true though. I mean, because as men, we'd rather have a tight knit of group than to have, let's say with women sometimes. I mean, some women just don't like any women at all, but like I would say, most women would be like, oh, I want like, 20, 30 friends. And you're like, well, okay, good luck trying to talk to them all the time. I think it's funny sometimes too is, when it's a joke. I'm only saying this as a joke, but like, when women like to say, are you cheating on me? Who's that other girl you're talking to? I'm like, you think I have time? You think I have time to talk to other women in this case? Do you really think that? Come on now, ladies. I mean, for real. I'm going to tell you, I have no time and I would be terrible at it because I would forget your name and I'd forget her name and then I'd mix the two. My point is, I just look at it as like, as men, we're like, we need to focus on our tight core group instead of worrying about like 1,000 individuals that we don't give a shit about, because it's the truth. I mean, if I'm helping you because of like certain things, then that's fine. Then I'll do it for certain things, but not, every single time.
Not to get on a cheating, tangent because I don't want to go there, but that is a side effect of being lonely when you're trying to fit that hole. You're never going to fill it with that. Mm-hmm. And I don't want to go on a tangent and I'll move on, but I just wanted to say that because I think that's where a lot of guys will try to go to fill the hole.
Right.
I mean, they'll go to a lot of different things, but there's this hole that I'm lonely. Let's fill it with this.
Right. They'll fill it with something else.
Right.
No matter what it is. I mean, it could be video game addiction. It could be porn addiction. It could be a whole slew of different things. But I'm just saying, it just depending on what you, I guess, like in that case.
Which goes into satisfaction.
Right.
So
you're trying to satisfy that loneliness need, and it's not scratching the itch.
Correct. And there's one thing in that particular relationship that is just not being satisfied.
Right.
So
so I'll get to the next one. There are roughly about 30 to 50% of men report either being lonely sometimes, often, or all the time.
That I'm going to say it like this, and I know my dad can kind of attest to this, but that one thing alone reminds me of some of the military surveys I've ever taken in my life. I mean, I'm not kidding. When you say, let's see, where is it at? 30 to 50, okay, being lonely either sometimes, often, or all the time. Like, I'm sorry, it was just one of those things, but like, to me, that seems kind of generic, though. When you're saying often.
Well, this was probably more of like a survey that was done.
No, I get that. But, when you're looking at 30 to 50 men or % of men in this case, and then you're saying sometimes, often, and then all the time. those are 3 different spectrums of, is it really, or are you?
I mean,
really
it is 3 different spectrums, but at the same time, sometimes, often, or all the time, they're still reporting being lonely. So,
I get
whatever level of being lonely is for them, they're still reporting it. That's, I think, what they're really looking at as far as the study goes.
But it also depends what makes them lonely.
Correct. It's that deciding factor.
Yeah, so that's what makes it go into those 3 categories.
No, I get that. When I looked at it, I'm just like, oh, okay, cool. So, but either way, no, I'm glad that they're reporting it. That's not what I'm saying. I just think it's weird that they're like, oh, and it's
I'm sure whatever the survey was, and I didn't look at the actual survey I'm sure that wasn't the only question, because that would be lame. Like, are you lonely sometimes, often, or all the time?
You're like, sometimes I guess I feel lonely, like, I don't know. Because then you wouldn't know what to say.
Right. You know what I mean? Sure there were other questions.
I mean, that would be like, are you a geek sometimes, often, or all the time?
All the time, baby. DC Elseworlds, baby. No.
No. So the polls and other surveys also suggest that, I mean, this is probably no surprise, that men are less likely to own up to being lonely, or feeling lonely, rather.
Is there a percentage?
No.
Oh.
That's what the survey suggested.
So, okay, how about this one? People who are socially isolated have a 32% chance of dying early compared with those who don't experience social isolation.
Actually, it is a proven fact that people can die of loneliness.
Well, it's true.
So
when people, okay, so listen, I'm going to pick on Matt for a second. I know you're an introvert, man, and I know you don't like a lot of people, okay? But I need you to know, I don't want you to die of loneliness, okay?
Listen, you can say that I'm socially isolated, but I'm not as socially isolated as you believe that I am.
Okay, listen, Matt, I'm just saying, I just want you to know that I'm here for you, buddy, and that I don't want you to be dying
I think the idea of social isolation that they're asking, that this stat comes from, and your idea of social isolation is different.
No, I was joking. I was only kidding with you. No, what I was saying, I'm thinking more of like a hermit. I'm thinking of that, like that old dude down the road, who's probably hoarding shit and is like, literally keeping to himself, and it's just not, it has nothing to do with the outside world, literally to himself. That guy in the cabin in the woods or something like that.
I mean, I do have a story, because like my dad's, like the house that I live in right now, that was my dad's uncle and aunt's house. And when my dad's aunt died, my uncle was still living in that house. And he didn't go anywhere. When we would go, my mother and my father would go bring him like dinner, lunch. Occasionally, like he would, make something on his own, but like he would leave all the dishes there. Like we would show up at night, all the lights would be off. He'd be sitting in a chair looking out the window.
Yeah, yeah. Then I can agree. I mean,
there was just like, you're talking about like an older guy. Like he was not. I don't even believe like he had a cell phone. Like I don't think he talked to anybody on the phone. You know what I mean? So you want to talk like socialized, like that's what this guy was.
Mm-hmm. No,
like completely socially isolated. The only people he really talked to was like my parents, who brought him food.
Right. No, I mean, yes, I would say that is the version that, yes, I would agree with you with the social isolation piece. I was only saying for you, Matt, because I didn't want you to die lonely and I wanted you to know that you have friends. All right. That's all I was saying. I was trying to help you out, Matt. Okay.
And it actually turns into being worse for that person when they don't have a support group, like family members.
Right.
Because the family members can somehow bring them out of it. Sometimes. Not all the time.
But again, I feel like it doesn't even matter whether it's a friend, family, whatever. Yeah. It's really, it can be even just one person, just being, or hell, it could be a dog or a pet, if that's really what it is, to get you to do other things, right? Because like, I know people say, oh, well, it's just a dog. I'm like, you're right. Trust me. I know Bucky is just a dog. I understand that. But let's say if I didn't have anything else and he was the only thing that I had, well, then you know what? I'm going to take care of him, right? I'm going to put that forth effort, and I'm like, all right, well, I'm going to have to go do these things. Like I'm going to have to go walk him. I'm going to have to go do these things. But that's what I'm saying. Like at the end of the day, whether it's a person, a pet, or whatever, as long as that thing is, helping you get out. do it.
But it also redirects your focus.
Correct. It gives you a more positive
Yeah.
outlook and hopefully a positive environment.
Yeah, I mean, now that I'm, a little bit older, like I do think back to if they had gotten him more support, if they had actually like reached out and said like, he is not doing well, like he needs to be somewhere where he can get like full 24/7 support, because he ultimately like wasn't taking care of himself. I don't think he was even really showering or doing anything. So like there was definitely like grief that was happening that he wasn't dealing with. He definitely had a lot of loneliness with, losing his wife that they've been married for, I don't even know how long, but it was a long time.
Mm-hmm.
So, I do think back to that. Like if he had gotten support, I mean, he died of a stroke, but would it have been prevented better? You don't really know, but
I mean, you're right. You don't know. I mean, but like kind of you bringing up marriage, right? Since I know we have a little section down here regarding marriage piece.
right. The one thing that you didn't mention is like the most common words used in men's suicide notes are worthless. That's
Okay.
the most common words, but
Yes, I could see worthless. I can see, well, I guess actually, I feel like that kind of sums it up because I don't know if really any other words that you could really use, really besides that.
It is this is another proven fact that men need to feel wanted. They need to feel needed. If they don't
Right.
feel that, then they're on a downward spiral.
No, absolutely. Like if you don't have a sense of purpose, if you don't have a drive, if you don't have anything to like look forward to, yeah, that's where it kind of leads down to, and that's absolutely correct. But I will say, I know we're kind of jumping around here, but the marriage piece, since we all are married and we all have kids, and we all
see
have
you're jumping
wives.
around here.
No,
I see.
no, hold on, don't you dare!
You're jumping down almost all the way
you
down
talked
there.
about marriage, so I figured why not talk about it? Then we'll jump back, and then we'll keep going forward.
Okay.
So
Okay, man.
Okay, man. So let's talk about marriage, right?
You
So
got it, man.
so no, when you're like looking as married men, right? So again, we all have wives and so forth, right?
Do?
I don't know. Do you have a wife?
Yeah.
Of 20, what was it? 20 something years, right? I don't know. I mean, I'm just guessing. How many years, Dad? He's like, shit. Carry the 1, 2.
Let's not talk about.
Okay, we're just kidding. We're kidding. Holly, don't listen.
No, because I could say first or second. I mean,
Ooh, yeah, I know. He's talking about my mom. Ooh,
All right, moving right along.
Anyways, all right, so let's just get into the fact here. So it says, in fact, there were 30% more likely than their single counterparts to claim that they have no one to turn to. And then we're talking about married men.
so what you're saying is that they can't turn to their wife? Is that what you're saying?
30% more likely
Okay.
to have no one to turn to.
Right. Because, depending on their significant other,
And how they perceive.
right? And
The
be
man.
careful on what you're going to say.
Well, no, it's no. Honestly, it's how they perceive what how the marriage should go.
Yep.
And it just depends on the person. It depends on the personality. It depends on how they click together. There's a lot.
Oh,
that
I know.
goes into it.
I know. Again, it's that 2 to tango. It's
Yes.
you do the battle and you have to keep this going. It's a constant, everyday cycle. But I agree that with married men, though, I mean, yes, there are things that, because I'll admit it, I know there's things that Allie will talk to other women about or other things about than rather me, and I get that, and that's fine. But at the end of the day, I would hope that she would come back to me and say, "Hey, let's talk about it," since I needed a second opinion, and I'm pretty sure I've talked to both of you about certain other things, without her knowledge, and I came back to her and we've talked about those kinds of things as well.
Yeah.
So it depends on that kind of person, and if they have that support to have that, relationships in place to be able to do all that.
Well, and two, I mean, these two kind of bullet points that we're talking about now. I mean, these are two also, talking about support, not just inside but outside the home as well.
Oh yeah, of course.
So, when you're talking about 30% more likely to have no one to turn to, we're not just talking about, going to your significant other. What we're talking like friends, coworkers.
No, but I was kind of more relating to the friends piece of it too, because like that's really the other piece. Because as guys, we love our wives. We understand this, or our husbands or whatever you are, right? It doesn't matter. The point is whatever your significant other is, you might want other people to turn to as well to kind of say, hey,
Right.
this is how I'm feeling. What do you guys think? And how do we perceive it? And at the end of the day, you're going to make that decision anyways. You're going to talk to your wife, your husband, whoever, right? But at the end of the day, you want that perspective. You don't want just yours and then maybe hers, and then you're like, all right, maybe there might be another opinion or something that maybe I could have looked at better or whatever, and that's where I'm saying as friends, that's what you should be doing.
Yeah. And I mean, being a guy, like I think there are certain things that I would talk to John about that I wouldn't necessarily talk to my wife about.
Right. And yeah,
not saying that like I wouldn't just go to her and be like, yeah, I'm not talking to you about that.
Mm-hmm.
And there might be some other guys that be like, well, me and my wife talk about everything. We don't hide. And that's great. You can do that. But I would also say, like, do you really?
Right. And that's where that level of
Right.
where you're comfortable at is, because at the end of the day, I mean, yes, you're going to still have to talk about certain issues and if it's a problem, but you still need some sort of
Right. There's just a level that I know my wife will never be able to relate to me.
Correct.
100%.
No, I agree. Okay. Then that's where I can definitely say I can agree.
Right.
I get that.
And
I
that's why I brought up the whole 5 that I have. I have 5 true friends. That's what I have. I have 5 true friends.
All right, ready? Oh no, I figured you wanted to list who your
No.
friends are.
But what I was going to say was,
Yep.
okay, when it comes to my personal issues, when it comes to combat, there's only one person I will go to, and that's Mike. Grow.
Yes. No.
You know that.
Yeah, yes. No, I know.
Okay. I will go to my wife, but there's only so much that she can understand. Mike has been in combat. Mike understands a whole lot more, which is not something that I won't go to her with, but he understands a lot more. You, sir, have walked the same dirt as I.
I have.
I will go to you.
And you have.
But my point is that, like he said, there are different levels of understanding that you will go to certain people for certain things.
No, I agree. No, I'm not disagreeing at all. I'm just was like simply stating is that, at the end of the day, it's, with your wife or significant other, it doesn't matter. It's whatever you're comfortable at that level if you're willing to talk to. And if they don't understand, then yes. I mean, there's things that I know for a fact that Allie's told me, and I'm like, I'll never understand that because I don't go out in the middle of the night and basically save people's lives on an everyday basis. That's just not who I am.
But there's somebody that at work,
Right, that could have the same effect. And that's the same idea that we're talking about here.
And, my wife might be aware of like, hey, I am talking to John about this, like, just so you know. And she might be like, cool.
Yeah.
Because like, I mean, we're on that level where she knows, like.
Oh, I was thinking more listen, we've been together a long fucking time. We're at the point of like, no bullshit here. Let's have a conversation. Like, I feel like with you and her in some ways, it's kind of like, listen, we've dealt with a lot. Let's just have a conversation at this point.
Now I'm going to bring this back to this whole podcast. You'll go to John because he's probably more of the geekdom than your wife is.
Oh, I can't talk to her about geek stuff because
no, absolutely not.
She will.
You see what I'm saying?
No.
You'll go to John about geekdom.
No, I mean, so again, it's like I'll talk to either one of you. We'll talk all day long about this. But like, I'll talk to certain things about Allie, but like she'll be like, I don't give a shit. And I'm like, okay. Well, I was surprised that she watched all the Marvel movies without me when I was gone for that brief time. But I was like, she did it to kind of get that relationship. Like, well, oh, hey, this is great. Now we can do stuff together. And I'm like, that's cool. I was like, that's awesome. But there aren't a lot of women that would want to go do that and spend all that time and, literally watch 30 something movies right now, or probably more now. But let's move forward from.
Well, you didn't finish the marriage piece. So.
I thought we did. I thought there was, what other piece was there?
There's a whole bullet point in there.
What do you do? Man, I was just reading it. Hold on.
You read one thing from that whole bullet
all
point.
All right. Hold on. Sorry. Okay, sorry. The next one is married men are also twice as likely, low level of support, as unmarried men who cohabitate with their partner, or with a partner, I should say. So, yeah, I mean, I mean, unfortunately, I never, can't really relate to that other part there, but
What, cohabitate with your partner?
well, okay, yeah. So, I guess okay, let me rephrase that. I guess more if it's like, let's say you're not married first, right? Because I understand if I'm not going to religious views here, but if we were to look at religious in a sense, the thing is that yes, you should be married before you live together, right? Because that is the one way to look at it. But I can tell you, I didn't do that. And I know Matt didn't do that. And I guarantee you didn't do that either.
No,
Well, actually,
I got
actually
nothing.
before
I'm sorry, go ahead.
before Danielle and I moved in together, we got married first.
Oh, okay.
'Cause
So, all right. So I stand corrected.
I moved into the apartment, and then after we got married, she moved in after.
Okay.
But
So I did not do that, clearly.
it really doesn't matter. I mean,
No, it doesn't.
if it's two people living together, the man in that relationship, whether they're if they're not married but they're living together, still has a higher level of support than the married person living with their spouse.
I mean, yeah, because let's say, you're dating somebody, and then let's say you have another couple or whatever living with you as well, right? You might have other people that you can talk to clearly than let's say your wife or your husband or whatever, right? Like it does, that's where I feel like that's where it's going to be more into play is nowadays with society. I mean, look at the friggin' rent we're living in. I mean, yeah, you're going to have 4, 5, 6 people living in a 2-bedroom apartment. And you're like, how's that working out? Well, there's 2 people in this room, or really 3, and then.
But the original statement was what?
So it was married men are also twice as likely as unmarried men who cohabitate for it's a low level of support we're talking about.
By cohabitation.
Yes.
Okay. And there's a reason for that. You're still courting.
Well, no, of course.
So you're not really
You're not as
intertwined.
right.
It's,
You're not combining the families quite yet.
no.
That's what I'm saying.
Because there's still an escape clause.
Oh, here we go.
I'm just
Well,
saying.
and you,
Just saying.
I know there's an
you look
escape
at
clause, I
two
get it.
people who are just living together. They're probably still at this point dating,
And they're learning about each other.
learning about each other.
They're not going to tell them their deepest.
They're probably still hanging
darkest-
out with their friends.
Like,
they're probably
exactly.
still.
This is all the honeymoon phase.
Yeah,
This is
that-
that's
and that's the
exactly what
thing.
this is.
But-
So the very next statistic on this is men are expected to spend time with their wives, which is normal. Obviously, it's normal, natural, very healthy. But sometimes it does come at the cost of outside friendships that they also need to invest in.
Right. So, for example, right. So with you and I doing, we'll say it's about every couple of weeks, right, doing this podcast. This is our time to kind of do our thing,
Right.
And especially now, me not working, yeah, it kind of sucks sometimes when I can't be like, oh shit, I can't call anybody because they're at work, or I got to wait until 5 o'clock at night to be like, hey, you want to go do something? You know what I mean? I can't just go hang out with people during the day anymore. But that's where I agree as men that, we need to have, again, those bonds. We can't just rely, unfortunately, on our wives or whatever, right? To be able to, fill those needs all the time because, we need guy time, right? We need to have
Right.
some sort of stupid time, or something like that to be able to just blow some steam off or do other things.
And the wives, unfortunately, they do need to understand that we can't be with them 24/7.
Or we would probably murder. Murder would
So
be
that, I mean, that was kind of very early on, it was one of those things that obviously we had to learn, we need friendships. I can't be here 24/7 all the time.
Is there a statistic in there that states the suicide rate on men that actually work with their wives?
Oh God, I don't
Because
know.
if you
I don't
lived
have
with
one.
them and worked with them, oh my God.
Listen, I've told you about my.
I don't have one,
philosophy
but-
on-
Okay, I'm just asking.
I've told you my philosophy on family, let's say marriages, whatever, on why they shouldn't technically work together and so forth. But I'm just saying it's true though. I mean, because I don't want to know. They're probably a lot higher than we think. And then I know the last part right here.
Yeah.
I'll say it real quick. It says spouses can be a great asset, but many men, fathers, can feel that their spouse of partner, or is it supposed to be or?
Probably.
Okay, or all right, that their spouse or partner may not fully understand them, and that they fear being vulnerable or being judged.
I could see that.
Well, it is. I would definitely say that's true on all levels. I mean, there's nothing about that I wouldn't disagree with at any point of that.
Yeah.
I mean, again, just make sure that again, as men, like we joke with each other, but remember, you may not have experienced certain things. I'm looking at him for a reason. Anyways, let's move forward, Matt. Since we're
So we probably should get through these real more quickly, so we can get to the
Sorry, I have
the back half of these. So I'll go through not discussing feelings, John. And many men would rather talk about anything else than feelings. I don't think that that's a big secret.
No,
it's not.
That's probably the biggest thing.
Or what's going on emotionally. I think, I think if we do talk about something like that, it's like something that either is really angering us in that moment or something that's really annoying us in that moment.
Well, yes, I know he's looking at me for a reason because that's kind of what happened today. Yes, I got a lot more upset than I should have at him, and I apologized for that. And unfortunately, it was because of all the stuff in that moment that I was dealing with, and I understand he knows, but it's just in that time it was hard for me to in that moment I probably needed to go that way about 50 feet or more and just calm down for at least 10 minutes.
Right.
But I didn't have a choice in that moment, unfortunately.
I think I just came in at the wrong time.
And it was fine. and unfortunately, that's what it is. I mean, because again, I had a lot of stuff going on this morning.
Yeah.
It was whatever. But and that's where I would say as men, and I know we're trying to get through this quick, but I would say the biggest thing is when we bottle up our anger, right? And we don't have that time to release it as a whole. And this is why we're talking about, friendships and things like that. You trust me, it's going to get worse in time, and then you're going to blow up on your wife or your whoever, and it's just going to make it worse. And then you're like, well, you know what? Maybe I need to go hang out with a buddy, or maybe I need to get out of the house for 3 hours and just come back and be like, all right, let's talk about it. Let's have dinner. Let's go do something, right? As a family or whatever the case is.
Yeah. So a lot of these we kind of already touched on, but we don't discuss feelings because we're showing vulnerability or appearing weak.
Big thing is vulnerability.
Yeah. Men are often taught to carry on, culture and society that men having feelings are weak, should not express emotion or their feelings.
Right. It's more of a feminine
It's
side.
Women do that.
But that's it. Like I said, it's a vicious cycle that goes down from generation to generation to generation. It's a taught response.
Yeah.
And it's also a toxic environment.
And the last one in this one is men compare themselves to this gold standard that values control, power, and invincibility, which all these things go against men being vulnerable and speaking out about your emotions and mental health issues.
Yes, because we're supposed to emulate power. We're supposed to be the man. We're supposed to be the machismo. We're the men.
We're supposed to be resilient. We're supposed to
that's another one.
Right. We're supposed to be the face of we're going to take all the bullshit and here we go and we're going to fight on and that's it.
We're going to come at you with a smile.
Right. And we're going to be like, everything's fine. Everything's okay. And nothing's going to, don't worry about me. I'm worrying about you.
Yep.
That's it. And that's where we fail as a society. And that's why now it is more of an issue. And that is why we have these things going on. And that's why it's important.
Yeah.
But I would say, because I know we're kind of semi-jumping around here. I mean,
you already talked about society, so you might as well just hit the next.
Sure, I'll talk about society.
It kind of fits right in.
So men in today's society may view deeper relationships as not masculine, which can lead to them further isolating themselves.
Which points into the whole machismo thing that they have to be non-vulnerable. There's nothing that can penetrate.
So I will say this: the other day when we were at that men's breakfast, okay, I can't remember that guy's name. Is his name Austin? The guy that was, what I'm talking about, the one that was the audio engineer. You got to help me out, Matt. He worked with you at Granite. I don't know who his name is, but anyways, you don't remember his name. It's not a big deal. But he said something that actually kind of related to this a lot. It was, men, we live on islands, and if we don't allow anybody else on these islands, then of course this is how we become isolated. This is how we become, separate from the world, and that we are supposed to be these machismo figures, and we're supposed to be these powerful guys, and we're supposed to kick ass and take on take names, and whatever the hell it's going to be for a guy in this case. But if we're just focusing on that, we're not looking at the bigger picture here. That's the problem, I think, as men, is we look at sometimes the in the moment and not so much the bigger picture. Well, in that sense,
you hit on provider.
Right.
There's another word that you forgot. We're the protector.
Well, yes, you're right.
And that goes into the vulnerability. You don't want to show vulnerability because you are the protector. You're the one that is supposed to protect the family. You're the one that is there, that nothing's going to happen to the family.
Correct.
So that's where that comes from.
Oh, yeah. No, I agree. And you're right. I forgot to mention that, but that is true.
Yeah.
I mean, but that also kind of leads into fatherhood and so forth.
Hence.
Yeah. So one of the ones in here is that we become more obsessed with who we're not. So it's like, I'm not girly, I'm not feminine, I'm not a little boy, I'm not immature.
Correct.
I'm not gay. We take on this, like, I'm a man, like, become emotionally stoic and isolated because we focus so much on, I'm not a feminine guy. I don't need to express emotion.
And if you think about it too, when you just said, I'm not gay, like, I hate saying it like that, but it's true, because as men, we think, oh, well, that's a gay feeling. But it's funny. What is the definition in the dictionary say?
I'm happy.
It says it's happy, right? Or, I mean, I guess if you want to, be a British folk, and you can say, hey, can you hand me a fag? And then you're like, oh, well, see, that I'm just talking about a cigarette. But I'm just saying, but that's the truth. I mean, that's what it says. But I'm just saying, though, but the connotation of how we use these things, as men all
they are slang terms for homosexual. That's it.
Yeah.
It's a slang term. That's all it is.
But when we say those things, like, well, we're no homo, or no whatever, that's where I'm talking about.
Right. We become obsessed with who we're not instead of who we should be.
And it goes back to vulnerability.
Right.
When you say no homo, you're trying to show you're not a homosexual. In certain people's minds, that relates to vulnerability.
Right. But again,
one would almost call that toxic masculinity. But
correct.
Hey, what do you know? That's
I would call that.
Yeah.
Right. And that's really what it is.
Yeah.
And that's the old school way of thinking.
And I'm sorry, I know I'm going into this, but you're my son.
That is correct.
When you were growing up.
Oh, yes.
Going back to the whole protector. When you looked at me when you were 7.
Okay, let's see. Yep. Okay, I can imagine
What did you think?
That if I said one bad thing.
No. I'm talking about,
I'm kidding.
You know what I'm saying.
No, I know what you're saying. Yes. When I looked at you, yes. And just hopefully with Wyatt down the road, is when I looked at, of course, I thought of, okay, he's got me. He's my go-to guy. He is the one that's going to make sure that everything's okay in that moment. And that's really what it is, right? And that's I understand now.
But yes, you're a dad.
Yes.
And you understand that Wyatt's going to look at you the same way.
Correct. No, and
whether it's real or not.
No, I agree.
Because you didn't know my faults back then. All you knew was, oh my God, that's my dad.
Right. No, I know.
And he'll never let anything happen to me.
True, and he might give you a 3-hour lecture on things, but it's
that's neither here nor there.
I'm kidding, but all right.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to.
No, it's fine.
We just had a father-son moment. It's okay. Sorry.
So fewer bonding opportunities. So
it's kind of like what he just said.
Sorry,
I'm cutting off your bonding opportunity to talk about fewer bonding opportunities. So research suggests men bond more during shared intense experiences through like sporting activities, serving in the military, etc.
Yes.
71% of women see options in, their children's schools, clubs, sports teams,
PTA type stuff.
Where men, it's only 49%.
Again, I also feel like it's like when I was mentioning before, the whole, like, if you're a single dad, for example, and you're kind of having to juggle certain things, that to me is like where you might feel more needed.
Well, it comes into the other point too. It's like, that's my children's school. I'm a man. I don't
Like,
I don't
no,
do
no, no.
PTA.
Yeah, I don't do right. Oh, trust me, I know. I'm looking at him for a reason because he didn't do PTA.
I don't do PTA.
Your mother did PTA.
I know, but it like for example, like
If you got a man's club, I'll join that.
oh, you know what it was? No, hold on. I'll tell you what it was. It was called Boy Scouts.
Hey.
He did.
I was a scout leader.
He was for
My-
like 6 months.
One of my brothers was a police scout, I think. He was
What?
in the
Oh, Police Explorers.
police explorers.
Oh, explorers,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
I know what you're talking about.
Let's skip down to fatherhood because I think that's the bigger one.
Yeah, it's a big one. Sure, I'll do the first one here. So, loneliness within fatherhood goes beyond having a spouse or not. The ability to seek advice or to be vulnerable without fear is priceless. And as fathers, we don't have that in this current environment. So, in this case, there are too many new dads that lack the mentorship that comes from others involved in our lives. I will say that for me, that is false. Because I feel there's a lot of people that I can, in this case, turn to and kind of get some sort
you,
of wisdom.
but-
All right,
right.
that's why I said false for me. I said, but I'm just saying you're right. Unfortunately, and I hate saying it, and this is where it doesn't matter, but like if you don't grow up with a dad, then how are you going to know how to be a
Right.
dad yourself? Or how are you going to, like, because you're going to have to rely on other people. And if you don't have those people, now you're just going to have to be like, all right, I guess I'm looking on YouTube, or I'm going to have to go look up these things myself and start learning.
It's kind of like one of those, like, you just got married, now you're having a child, and
Yeah, that's kind of what I did. Yeah.
maybe her parents moved to Florida, and
That's
your
kinda what
parents
they're
now
doing.
live in Arizona, and now it's just you, her, and this new baby.
Kind of sounds like
So it's like, who do you go to if all of your friends are single or married without kids? They're going to be the ones that are going to give you the most advice, but they don't have kids. So are you really going to listen to them?
right. And
I can answer that because when I had John, it was just his mother, myself, and John. My mother lived in Mass. We lived in Mississippi. My John's mom, her family lived out in Colorado. So we were isolated.
Yeah.
I know the feeling, and nobody was there to instruct or guide, or it would be like over the phone.
And there's no, institutional support for fathers.
Correct.
And you can find almost 100 million for women, single mothers all over the
Yep.
yeah,
United
internet and-
States,
yeah.
like all over the place. There's like very few for
And
fathers
and unfortunately,
to.
when you're in that position, it's hit or miss. You learn as you go. I mean, you make mistakes. I know I made a whole bunch of mistakes, but we learn as we go. He's still alive. He's still happy. He's doing a podcast with you, and
Here we are.
and here we are.
Yeah.
I mean,
No, but I think to kind of go on that point too is, if we're talking about the equality, of men versus, women and things like that. Yes, there's more support groups, there's more support systems and resources and stuff like that for, let's say, single mothers and stuff like that. But when you look at those single dads and having to do that on their own and not having that, sense of support in a sense, you would think that, especially nowadays, come on. You got to know that there's got to be something out there, like I'm not saying like a how-to guide. I mean, clearly, if there was a how-to guide to how to be a dad for dummies, I mean, there probably is. But I'm just saying, at the end of the day, again, you learn as you go. Like
But that's
there's
the thing.
nothing-
You're not
Yeah.
going to solve loneliness from going to Barnes and Noble and reading a book.
no, you're right.
I would have liked that book at one point.
Yeah, I mean, sure, but you're right.
Sure, you will learn how to maybe deal with your children better, but you're not going to learn how to deal with that loneliness and getting, some of these, parenting groups for women they have groups.
Yeah.
They don't even bring their children to them. Like they do the childcare, and the mothers all sit around and they talk.
Right, but actually, if I'm not mistaken, Kevin Hart just did a movie. It was on Netflix, and he was a single dad in that. I can't remember what it was, but he was actually, and I remember this one scene. He was sitting in a group with a bunch of women, and he was talking about how he's a single dad and whatnot, and they were all making fun of him for it. But I mean, granted, I understand it was a movie and whatnot, but I'm just saying, like, as a dad,
We're talking Kevin Hart in a comedy.
okay,
movie.
I'm just saying.
Yeah.
But what I'm saying is, though, is it's still the picture, right? It's still saying, like, you're a single dad, you're in a bunch of, group with a women, and you're like, well, you're not supposed to be here. What are you doing
Right.
here? And you're like, it shouldn't matter. Like, I'm trying to take care of my kid, and I'm trying to, provide them a future just as well as you are right now.
Well, that's the thing. It's like you feel out of place, especially if you're going into a group of women like PTA. That's another thing. When we went back to PTA, most of them are women. I went to a PTA meeting and I was like in a sea of women, and they were just nothing personal. They were cackling, and I'm just sitting there. I felt out of place.
Well, I think the
And
worst
it's like,
part was,
as a man, like you almost don't belong because
not only
Yeah.
that, but I also feel like they would be like, so, now I'm just going to use you as an example. Like, so Brian, would you like to care to comment on what we were talking about? And you're like, this is a trap. This is a trap. I don't think this is a good idea for me. I don't think I should be talking right now. But then you have no choice because now all these women are looking at you. No, but I'm just saying though, like
even in that scenario, I don't even think they would have done that.
I mean, you
No,
never
be
know.
honest.
no, me, I would be like,
say-
that's all I heard.
No, I know, but you say that, but I think there could be some women out there that'd be like, yeah, you know what? Let's ask this guy since he's the only one here, and that could happen. You
You're
just
a
may not-
dad. Why
Come
don't
here.
you answer this?
and you're like, great.
So the very next one, and this one always drives me nuts because I see this all the time. And you're watching a TV show or a movie, or you're reading a book, and you see these fathers on these TV shows or these movies, and they're idiots.
Well, I'm gonna stop you right there. If you watched a lot of the 80s and 90s, like bored,
I'm not talking 80s and 90s because the dads in those 80s and 90s shows were dads.
correct. When I'm looking at Family Matters, if I'm looking at Carl Weathers, I mean not Carl Weathers, you know what I'm talking about, Carl.
I'm talking shows
But anyways, but
on
no.
Disney and Nickelodeon right now.
I understand right now. Yes, that's
They're
what I'm
idiots are non-existent.
saying. No, I agree. I'm just saying that yes, if I was just saying based on the generational ones, yes, no, the 80s and 90s, you're definitely going to be like, okay, no, those were dads. Those are the ones that you should be looking up to as like a role model in a sense.
Honestly, one of the best dads on TV that I've ever seen was Fresh Prince.
Oh yeah,
Even though he was his uncle,
Uncle Phil, man, come on
I'm
now,
telling you, he was
he was the
on
dad.
point.
No, I only say Family Matters too with like Steve and whatnot.
Yeah.
Like he was a dad. Like he
Right.
is presented like he's like, listen.
No, I'm
you're-
talking like newer stuff, like
Yeah,
especially like Disney, Nickelodeon. Like
no, yeah.
you see some of those, and like
let's put a kid in timeout. No, I'm sorry.
they only like further complicating.
I
They,
could think of one person in mind, but I'm not going to say it. But
they complicate parenting rather than adding like anything of value to parenting.
Correct.
And these different types of media, like the fathers, they need to be restrained by the mother.
Yep.
The fathers are portrayed almost the same as the children are, immature.
Yep.
And
Cool, huh?
they ridicule their parenting instead of encouraging it.
Yep.
And so you watch some of these things, our children are watching these things, and they're showing how,
A dad isn't supposed to be.
right. And they're, how the children are treating the dad, how the wife is treating the dad. And that's how they're looking at how men are treated.
There are certain things that mom is supposed to teach. There are certain things that dad is supposed to teach. And I'm not saying that to segregate. I'm saying that to, guess what? There are things that mom should teach. There are things that
Right.
dad should teach. Guess what? Mom shouldn't teach certain things that dad is supposed to be there for them.
right. So like, okay, I'm gonna use him as an example. Okay. So one of the things, of course, growing up, right? We were always told that yes, so we're talking about the respect for dads and stuff like that. Okay.
Mm.
Now I know he makes the joke about this, but it's true though, but it shouldn't matter whether it's the dad or the mom. But I'm gonna say this. His philosophy was you will never disrespect your mother.
Nope. You will not.
Ever. Okay. But it really should go, you will never disrespect myself and your mother.
Wow.
But I'm just saying, I know you didn't care, but that is the way I look at it now is like at the end of the day, like another big thing that I saw too is that when kids, they go up to the dad and they want to be like, hey, what they should be doing is being like, no, you can wait your turn. Clearly I'm having a conversation. Like if mom likes to step in and says, hey, I'm clearly having a conversation with your father, stay over here. I'll talk to you in a minute. That's what should be happening, right? That should be a clear indication of like, you're clearly important. Like, you are mom and dad. Your kids right now, they can wait a second, and they need to wait so that way mom and dad can finish their conversation, and then you can say, hey, what's going on?
So going off of Matt being a Gen X, because we've had this discussion, he and I have, grown up in the same somewhat time
Oh,
period.
wait, hold on. Did you call him a Gen X, or did you call him, what was the other thing you called him?
A Zennial? No, anyway, I'm not going to go in that. But my point is Matt, I'm going to ask you a question. Did you grow up, a child should be seen and not heard? Because I did. In a family situation, when the grown-ups are talking, the child will not speak.
Oh, I mean, for the most part, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you did grow up that
Yeah.
way.
Yeah.
Things are changing.
Correct.
They're getting a voice, but there are certain times when the voice should sit down and wait, like you just said.
Correct.
So I wanted to point that out.
Oh, no, I
of the
agree.
different generations, the way they're growing up now. But
Okay, so yes, as kids though,
yes.
do we have memories of like, hey, mom, dad, and then but see, I have done that. I know I have, and I know my brother has, and so forth. But then,
and I've shut you down.
I know, and again, as we got older, then we're like, all right, well, clearly we're going to wait a second before, and then normally, I'll say this, Matt. I know I'm not trying to be going off here, but like typically, I have to yell to get my point across because I tell you what, most people in my family. I have to make sure that I have to be the loudest one talking because if I'm not and they don't hear me, I don't have a voice in my opinion. And that's really what would happen because I would be interrupted 3, 4, 5 times.
That's only on my side.
That's BS. That's all I'm going to say. But anyways,
John, why don't you take that last one and then we'll get into
let's do that.
impacts, because I think that this one more pertains to you right now.
I'm sorry, pertains to me, is that what you said?
The no national paternity leave. I think that one pertains to you right now.
Ow, ouch. Anyways.
I thought that's changed.
No, hold on. So I know what he's talking about. So the no national paternity level or paternity leave policy in America. So as a new father, our job is done. The second child is born. It's the beginning. If a father takes parental leave, we often need excuses or reasons why we need to take leave. So it is automatically presumed or assumed that child care and caring for the newborn is women's work, and the fathers play little to no role other than going to work and leaving the women to do what they are naturally born to do. So yes, you're right. I would say now that is me. That is what I'm doing right now. And also on top of that, I'd also bring in the whole paternity leave as a whole, because the paternity leave factor, I mean, literally the military, I can tell you in the last few years has just gotten it, and they just did it. I mean, I had a little bit of it, which was great. But yeah, I look at my dad and he never had it. Like, he had to take his own leave. Like, you would have had to take in your own leave or PTO or whatever the case is. What they should be doing is now, they should have done it a long time ago, but really is give you enough time, right? So if like I look at like Sweden or Norway or something like that, those countries, they say, I mean, granted, they give, I think it's like the women up to like a year of literally just letting them take care of their kid and get paid to do it. I'm not saying that what they also should do is like for the men, do the same thing, like, or give them a good amount of time to be like, hey, you need to develop with your spouse, with your child. And it's not just a one-way streak. You know, it should be like, you are here together. It is your kid. This is what it is. And at the end of the day, you know, we look at now, I mean, I'll even say it, like, I just saw something about Bernie Sanders talking about how they're trying to make a bill through the Senate right now, doing the 40 to 32 hour work week. They're doing that right now. Yeah, I'm telling you, that's what
that'll never pass. But
I'm telling you, that's what they're working on apparently right now.
That's what they're working on. But I mean,
40 to 32. But
it's one thing, like when you were going through and reading that, even when I was typing this out, it was like, yes, like on some level, obviously women do need that maternity leave because of breastfeeding and all the other things that they have to do to take care of newborns.
Yeah.
But at the same time, as a new father, why do we not have the same right to take care of our new child just as the new mother has?
it's because of that. It's because of our society saying, hey, you are the nurturers. You are the ones that are taking care of said kid.
There are a lot of things that have changed recently because I work for a company that now gives paternity leaves for men, and they actually have a month.
Which is a lot more than most people probably.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
Which not all
And
companies do that.
But I'm gonna
Yeah.
put them out there. I'm at ADT. I work for ADT, and they actually give men a month paternity leave. So I'm just saying that is changing.
No, and that's great. I think it's wonderful that they're doing that. But what I'm saying is let's say you are a single dad.
Mhm.
Like, I'm going to throw that out there. If you're a single dad and you are now doing this by yourself, and you literally, let's say you don't have support, you don't have all these things in place, you're screwed, because now you definitely had to make sure that you had the daycare already set up, because there's nothing you can do about it. And that's the other big piece of that.
In the military, I almost missed his birth because I was on deployment. I had to come home early, and they allowed me to come home early just so I could be there for his birth.
And sometimes, and I'll say it, I've seen people that that do, but then they don't have a choice because of what they're doing and where they're at that moment. But I'm just saying, though, as a
I mean, obviously women need probably more time to, for healing, for breastfeeding, for these certain things that are happening biologically. But men should also be there as well. And not just have like, oh, we'll give you 3 weeks. What?
No, I mean, realistically, if we're really going to look at it, I would even say 6 months. I would even say I'm just pushing it out to 6 months only because, like, I'm not saying a whole year, because guess what? Unless we were Norway or Sweden or something like that, we'll never get to that point. What I'm saying is if we looked at a 6 month period, and I would even say for women, they need a lot longer than that. Like, even if it was like 9 months, a year, whatever. The point is like, if you gave them time to develop that bond with their child, that is really more important. And if, like I said, they're looking at, work weeks and things of that like nature, you need to start coming up with policies, things like that, to be able to be like, hey, you have this much time. Go spend time with your kid. Go spend time with your family and develop those bonds, because you're not going to get it so many years down the road. It's just, unfortunately, the way it's going to work. But, anyways.
Moving on.
So how does loneliness really impact us men? Lower educational attainment, poor sleep quality, elevated blood pressure, depression or other mental health issues, anxiety, stress, overall health and wellness, and suicide.
I mean, you couldn't have described it any better, because that's literally all it is. It's the biggest things. I mean, that's why, when we talk about these things, so if you've been listening to, this whole entire podcast, or at least, this episode, we talk about these things because these are the things that especially as men, and that's why, women, if you're listening too, these are the signs you need to start looking out for men, because you may not think about it in that moment. You think, oh, they're fine. They're going to take care of it.
Yeah.
Guess what? You could say that all you want, but I guarantee you, if you'll figure it out, that some of these things, they're just hiding really damn well, and they're not ever going to show you. But if you start researching on your own, I guarantee you'll find some signs. Start being an investigator, all right? Start looking at these signs.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
So we obviously don't have a whole lot of time to read through and discuss every single one of these bullet points, but
I think we could summarize it, though.
We can probably summarize it. So these are our evolved steps, for some of the men that might be experiencing loneliness.
So basically what Matt Stolz was trying to say is like, how do we better ourselves?
Right.
Like, these are the steps on how you would basically get to that point.
So the very first one, connect with others.
What's up, bro?
Feeling lonely, reach out, connect with others, join a club or a sports group, find something that is, interesting to you. If you go to church, find a group at church. If you like sports,
join a 30 older, league for softball, or something like that, I only say that because
there are circles for a lot of different people. So, if you're into sports, if you're into going to the gym, like, find somebody who, find groups online that
go work out with your dad, whenever you feel like, if that's the case that you do.
It's about connecting with others and making those connections. And just getting out there,
Of course. And like the next one, prioritize your self-care, right? So the biggest thing is, and I'll say it because I'm a huge advocate for this, is like, I like some alone time. I like to be able to, like Matt likes to do all the time too, is like to just.
So you like to socially isolate. Okay,
Yeah,
John.
you do. Okay, I was joking. Look, I'm not saying that as men we shouldn't have our separate time from people. I'm just saying that we don't want to the point of like isolation to an island.
I need my time to. I'm being very introverted. I like my time to be at home,
Play some video games.
Kind of not decompose, but like just
decompress
decompress and just be by myself. Like all day at work, like there's people all around, like I have to interact with people. It's just like I want to take the time just to be alone and myself before the wife gets home,
and that's not a bad thing. No, it
just becomes a bad thing when you want to do it 24/7.
Correct.
No, I mean, like for example, like today, like I will admit that it's nice. Again, if I'm home literally all the time with my kid and he's screaming, and then I have a dog who won't shut up, and then love my wife, but if like something's happened and it just all comes together, it's like, all right, y'all, like I'll admit it. Like once my son goes to bed,
y'all gonna make me lose my mind.
No. But like, when my wife goes to work, she does her thing, right? And then when my son goes to bed, I do my thing, and then I'm like, cool, this is my time to relax and decompress. And so that is what I like about it, in the most part. But like, yes, do I mind spending time with, with Allie and my son? No, that's not what I'm saying. It's the times where I'm like, it's like you're saying, even if I was at work and I was doing the same thing as you are, it's all that interaction. It's all the bullshit, the levels of stress that we're dealing with every single day. And how do we
gotta take care of yourself? Yeah.
And going back to my situation, I was deployed for 6 months. I come home. I wanted to be in your brother's life.
Of course.
Constantly. So I took over where your mother had her time.
No, of course.
So
Absolutely.
It was like she was constantly with you. Then it was me. So I was always with you guys when I was home. So it would be, go out, let's go outside, let's play, let's go play ball, whatever. But point is it was the 6 and 6. It was different for me a little bit.
Well, no, yeah, but it's just a different scenario. But I mean, at the end of the day, it's just make sure that you're still balancing your life in a sense. It's balancing that piece of it. But also the other thing too, right? So leveraging technology, right? So we live in this
big one, yeah.
So living in a digital age, right? So we have technology. Oh wait, what's that thing called? A cell phone. You could pick it up and say, "What's up, bro? Hey, you want to like hang out? Like maybe do a podcast or something?" Like, it's like, you could literally just say, "Hey, let's go do something."
Well, it's even like, going and finding online support groups, or I mean, even some of the therapies now are online and they have their own, apps and platforms that you can literally just go on and get help
right
in a fraction of a second.
Yes. But where I come from, this turns into loneliness.
It does, but if that's all you have,
no, and I agree.
Right. If that's all you have, then it's certainly better than sitting at home in the dark, waiting for someone to come and bring your next meal, which might not be until tomorrow.
Absolutely correct. Right? I come from a generation where I need physical interaction. I need somebody there to talk to, not this.
No, so I can agree with you on that, and I know Matt can too. To a degree, I'm going to say
well, and that goes with the first one. I mean, obviously, you need to connect with others, not just on your phone.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is that also to kind of go with Matt is like the whole virtual therapy has also really been recently. This is in the last couple of years. I would say a few years, really. It's only because of really COVID that it took off. Really,
well, a lot of things took off
because of COVID. But like the biggest part is like. Yes, if you're at an isolated location, so like you're out in East Bumfuck, New Hampshire, like way up north somewhere, and you don't have a lot of resources around you, that's where I'm hoping that, yes, the technology piece of this, if you have that capability to be like, hey, so I have ways to be able to connect with others or, seek, resources or things like that.
It's even in that moment when you're feeling that level of loneliness where like you're feeling like, I'm just worthless. Like there's really nothing here for me. having those online platforms or social groups or support groups or whatever can be a difference maker
Mm-hmm.
for someone to either get the support
Yeah.
or commit suicide. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
It's like,
My biggest concern these days now is our future generation of men.
Right. And I mean, you
And
look at,
Well,
oh, go ahead.
I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt.
Oh,
but
you're good.
there are kids now that live on this. All their social interaction is on a phone or a computer or in chat groups, and there is no social interaction outside of the home.
So,
And that's what scares me.
the worst part of this whole thing too is like, I'm going to mention one thing is, you look at, I'll say it, like you looked at World War II guys that were going in at 16 to 18-year-olds at that time, and how, let's say nowadays, there's so much mental health issues, and especially in men in this case now. There's a big difference between what they did back in the 40s and they do now. Like you can't, I mean, you can try to compare apples and oranges here, but like at the same time, these men didn't have a choice in the matter. I'm going to say now they have choices, but the problem is if there was a draft, my God, it would be terrible. You wouldn't find anybody in the military. But what I'm saying is also, Matt, before I know, because you're going to say something, is that with guys, and especially this day and age, and even females, it doesn't matter at this point, is that you're right. There is no, when you're only looking at a tablet or you're only looking at a phone at a very young age, and that's all you know, and you don't know how to actually have a conversation with somebody because you're not taught to do that, and you weren't told, hey, let's go play outside until the lights come on, or let's go do other things because our parents want us to go be kids because our society doesn't allow us to have those kid moments anymore that we did. That's where we're failing as a whole society and as generations to come because of that, and that's where we need to stop and be like, let's have our kids be kids.
yeah. So I think the one issue we have is the younger generations are not actually getting therapy.
No, they're not.
And what they're considering therapy are these influencers.
Oh, you mean TikTok? Yeah.
Not just TikTok. I mean, they're all over every single social media platform that you can imagine. And these, I'm using air quotes here, but these influencers are not giving professional advice. They're just talking out their buttholes. And our younger generations are eating up every single word that they're hearing.
And they don't care.
And that's where we get this problem with loneliness because they're listening to every single word. They're following every single piece of advice.
They're buying into it.
They're buying into it. And then they, some years pass. And where are they?
Yeah, I know.
They're feeling alone. They're having the anxiety. They're having the depression.
They're having more problems now than they ever did because there's no physical interaction. There's no social interaction. And it's getting worse.
Right.
It's not getting any better.
No, absolutely. And that's where we have these issues now.
And it leads into the last one where it's get professional help.
Yes.
Chronic loneliness doesn't just go away. And yes, you can be surrounded by 5 people, by 10 people, by 2 people, by 100 people. It's still not going to go away.
It's an everyday battle. That's the issue that we deal with now.
Sometimes it's only through like therapy, counseling, even medication that you're going to be able to work through some of these emotions or the trauma or whatever the core root issue is. It's the only way you're going to work through it. And, learning anxiety management techniques to gain control over, irrational fears, learning, cognitive behavioral therapy, which is one thing that you'll learn in mental health treatment.
Yep, CBT. Yep.
That can help you identify negative thought processes that might be encouraging you to isolate and do all that.
Because we're coming into an age where everything now has a name or it has a diagnosis.
Right, it's a label.
88, well, no, it's not. Yes, it is.
It is a label.
But ADHD, let's look at ADHD.
Yep.
When I was a kid, ADHD didn't exist. It was, you know what? Start focusing on your schoolwork or stop being an idiot or whatever.
You're too hyper.
You're too hyper. Calm down. Now they're actually focusing on, guess what? There is a problem. Let's fix it. And I'm glad for that. But at the same time, we're creating a society because of technology that is fighting against that.
Yep. No,
So
it's true.
it's unfortunate, but that's how we're looking at it.
Absolutely. But I think we've really hit the nail on this one. The whole kid and caboodle, folks. I mean, it's a lot to talk about, but I mean, I tell you, it's one that should be talked about more as a whole, because if we don't start talking about this, men and women and whoever you like to call yourselves at this point, just realize that it's a problem no matter what. And it's not just a one-time event. It's basically, it can be an everyday event. It can be a lifetime event. It can be every waking moment, whatever the deciding factor it is, right? But at the end of the day, this needs to be talked about. It doesn't need to be just left alone.
Yeah. I would even be as bold to say most men that you see walking around on some level is experiencing some loneliness.
And you know what? I challenge you as men, reach out. Even, reach out every so often and be like, hey man, what's good? How are you feeling right now? Like, actually have a conversation. Don't bullshit, no nothing. Like, be real. Like, actually have a man conversation with them and then see where that goes. See where you can go with that.
The only thing I say is, if you're going to do that, don't be judgmental.
Well, that is true. Don't be judgmental, but
that's just because that'll shut somebody down quick.
Right. But the biggest thing is too, is if they're going to allow you to, hear, hopefully it should be reciprocal. So basically, if you're talking, you should be listening, and then so on and so forth. Like, have that two-way conversation, not just a one.
It's got to be someone that you trust. I mean, obviously, you're not just going to walk up to some random guy at Walmart and start just filling your, your feelings and everything, because he's probably not going to be the one you want to.
He's going to be like, "Hey, get your shit and get out, all right, man? Like, I don't want to talk to you right now.
Get your shit and get out. Welcome to Walmart."
we could go talk to the guy in Home Depot.
Bill?
Bill. Let's go talk to Bill.
Or if you really want, we can go talk to Mr. Fuck It up and the dump over at Nashville
on Trash Mountain.
Yeah, Trash Mountain. But anyways, guys and gals, we appreciate the love. We appreciate everything you guys do. Hopefully that you guys will share this out for everybody to listen to. I'm very appreciative of my dad being a good sport on this episode today.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely, and that's why we decided to bring you on. It was a nice little moment that you can share with your son. Just
joy
for years to come. But anyways, guys, thank you for tuning in. Until next time,
stay geeky.